In session number 13 of the series on military law, we would cover the Judge Advocate General's Department. What is this department? What is their role? What functions do they perform? And also the job contents, career opportunities, and how does one get into a JAG department and become a military law officer. The JAG officers, though they are army officers, but they perform the functions of a military lawyer, and it is they on whom all the legal and judicial functions of the armed forces are based. Military law as a career offers a fascinating and rewarding experience. It is something which a counterpart in civil side cannot ever aspire or hope to. And this presentation would explain the process of induction in the Judge Advocate General's Department of three services. Also, similar is the position in Coast Guard. And as I had spoken earlier, the role and functions, the charter of the JAG Department. What are the special features that set it apart from all other careers relating to law? Number one, it is an all India employment. As officers of the regular army, navy or air force, they can be posted on all slots or billets relating to law, and it is not confined to a state or a region. The officers hold commission, which is given by the President of India, and to that extent there is security of tenure, and the slot is not dependent, the service is not based on which party has formed the government. It has nothing to do with that. The service in JAG department offers a scope for a posting abroad, and officers are at times selected for the missions outside India. Being part of the regular army, the life offers adventure, outdoor activities, the postings in military stations and cantonments, and the tenure of duty in areas far away on national border gives an opportunity for adventure in outdoors, plenty of time for sports, etc. It is an honorable profession. One is dealing with the soldiers. The advice relates to military life, and to that extent, it is the calling of the nation in which one is engaged while being part of the JAG department. The officers get an opportunity to interact with higher judiciary when they are posted on legal cells or in the armed forces tribunal appointments, and even at the headquarters command or corps. What does the job entail? The range of functions, apart from military law, they border on and they deal with, they fall into security jurisprudence, where the issues relating to treaties, relating to the human rights, international humanitarian law, all these are impacted, and security jurisprudence by itself is emerging as a distinct branch of law. There are cases pertaining to human rights, whether for own forces, relating to disabled children, or in relation to the detainees and enemy forces. And when it comes to the law relating to armed conflict situations, then it is the law of war or international humanitarian law that is squarely applicable. JAG officers are also consulted in matters relating to procurement and supplies, when their advice is sought on matters concerning the regimental funds, public funds, or the arbitration cases, etc., that concern the supplies to the armed forces. Number of officers who get an opportunity to serve abroad on UN peacekeeping operations, or when a situation occurs like that was there in Indian troops in Sri Lanka. So the law of peacekeeping operations is also applicable, which the officers have to study and apply. Environmental considerations, whether it's a project of engineers, road building, or any other operation, including practice in the range areas, would require due application and adherence to the environmental norms, and therefore environmental law knowledge is also expected from military lawyers. The military ranks, all ranks in fact, are having single persons who are not married as well as those who are married. There are also widows and the families, and therefore the family laws relating to whether marriage, plural marriage, maintenance, adoption, a divorce, all these matters uh, frequently occur at the unit level informations, and these matters, the files are sent to military lawyers to seek their expert and professional opinion, and therefore knowledge of family laws becomes mandatory from that perspective. Of course, a large part of the functions while posted at areas, command relates to military discipline, and that primarily relates to and concerns criminal law enforcement. Of course, it is based on the service laws, Army, Navy, Air Force Act, and the criminal law enforcement is carried out by adherence to military law provisions. The service regulations, by that I mean defense services regulations and regulations for the army, have provisions relating to ethics. And these ethical norms are always expected and they are insisted upon in military service, and therefore military lawyers would be called upon as and when needed to comment on ethical issues. Of course, soldiers are also citizens of the country. They have the constitutional rights, fundamental rights, subject to the provisions of Article 33 that we had covered in one of the earlier sessions. And accordingly, the military lawyers would be duty bound to study and apply, adhere to the constitutional provisions. Service laws are contained in the Army Act rules and regulations, and matters of transfer, postings, complaints, grievances, promotion, confirmation are as of routine projected to the military lawyers to seek their opinion on such cases. And supply and contract cases usually require disposal or recourse to alternate dispute resolution, and these arbitration cases also are referred to JAG departments when they are processed along the chains of command. Now, different chairs or the postings for which JAG officers are consulted and they are assigned are the duties of judge advocate at court martials. This is the foremost duty, and that's why it is called judge advocate's department. Then simultaneously, all officers who would be called upon to perform JAG duties would also be posted somewhere and be accountable and assigned functions to render legal advice. At times they serve not in the JAG department but part of the staff, that is called A branch or the AG's branch. In that position, right up to the Army headquarters at PS Directorate, they perform as duties relating to staff officers. Then the next very important function pertains to the legal cells that are working in conjunction with Armed Forces Tribunal or the High Court and the Supreme Court. And these legal cells are meant to progress and defend cases filed for and against the armed forces. And officers invariably get posted to the legal cells. There is an Institute of Military Law at Delhi, and some of the officers at one time or the other are posted to work there as instructors or as teaching faculty. There are also, while at Army headquarters and at Armed Forces Tribunal, officers who are required to take up work, litigation on behalf of Union of India, in which they perform. Now, the Army Acts contains and Army rules also contain various provisions where the reference is made to the Judge Advocate General's Department or the Judge Advocate, and these are listed on the slide in front of you. We would not take up these separately one by one as part of this session, but these would be duly explained to you when we cover the other sessions where these provisions come into application. According to the regulations, the Judge Advocate General is the legal advisor to the Chief of Army Staff in matters of military, martial, and its fighting service aspect, international law. He also assists the Adjutant General in matters relating to discipline involving application of military law. Now, this is the position inserted in the regulations for the Army, and while JAG is the legal advisor at the apex level to the Chief of Army Staff, his junior officers are also provided correspondingly at different formations like command, corps, division, area, etc., and they perform the same duties at their respective headquarters, what is done by the Judge Advocate General at the apex. And this department is also the nodal legal agency for single point contact with institutionalized judicial system, as well as advise on all legal matters pertaining to the Army. I would explain this in a little greater detail. Whenever Army is required to operate or to interact with the judiciary, then it is the legal officers serving in the JAG department who become the nodal agency to operate, interact, and function in relation to the matters which may be there pending or being taken up by the judiciary. Now, those of you who may be interested in making a career in the JAG department or even otherwise may be curious as to what are the job contents or what are the quality traits that are needed in officers who are posted to the JAG department. Foremost, they must have analytical ability, a case that comes to them, assigned to them. They should be able to deal with it in an analytical ability. They should be able to differentiate and identify what are the effects of the case, what are the legal issues involved, what are the rival legal contentions, what is the applicable law, is there a case law. Now all this is to be done analytically, and for which the officers are expected to have possess requisite ability. The work requires hard work and professional competence. There is a lot of paperwork to be done. There is volume of correspondence that is to be perused, the statutes, the regulations, the policy decisions, case law, and therefore it calls for professional competence of the highest order. Ultimately, whatever opinion is expressed by a JAG officer would invariably be in writing, preceded or succeeded by discussion or its enunciation to the staff officers and commanders. This naturally calls for very high communication skill, both verbal as well as written, and that is just needed and one can't get away with it. Speed is also of paramount importance because the opinion has to be given, what is legal is to be done within the laid down and assigned time frame, and therefore a speedy disposal of cases, and of course the JAG officer should be able to assign priority depending upon the urgency in the case that has been assigned to him. The department is small, and therefore JAG officers, particularly at sub-area, center, station level, brigade, are often just one officer and a clerk or assistant, secretarial assistants cell, and therefore this officer is required, is called upon to act independently, and he should have courage of conviction that, well, this is the legal issue in the matter that has been referred to me, and that is the correct advice that I am rendering. This courage of conviction is expected in the officer who's a military advisor. This shows and this expects the officer to have self-confidence. Also, there is a need for a high level of integrity. These are the matters concerning national defense, very senior officers, or relating to equipment which are quite expensive, and therefore it is expected that there would be a sense of probity and very high integrity which should be above or beyond doubt. Physical fitness in the case of military lawyers routine is of profound necessity, because these officers are, when they are placed at different headquarters, stations, they have to follow the same routine as other officers, and they are called upon every year to go and appear, present themselves for the annual physical test, and therefore they have to have robust physique and good health. Analytical ability was one of the quality traits that was indicated earlier, and at serial number 1, it is the competence to undertake the study of a problem, to, as I said then, to marshal necessary facts, discard irrelevant facts, find out and prioritize legal issues involved, what are the applicable statutory, regulatory provisions or policy decisions, and under the circumstances, what are the options available with their relative advantages or consequences. Hard work, as I said, it is not a 10 to 5 or Monday to Friday job. It is for 365 days all the time. Of course, the officers get what is their annual leave or casual leave, but while on duty, this calls for very hard work and professional competence, where rendition of time-bound advice, which should be for giving which one is liable to be held accountable, is expected from the JAG officer. Communication skill, again, I am re-emphasizing that to bring out what is the opinion, and that should be clear of technical jargon which the commander or a senior staff officer who doesn't hold law degree should be able to understand, and it should not be behind the layers of technical legal jargon. Time-bound, need-based ability to render concise legal opinion in the only what is required is the best service interest, and there is no other consideration. Independence and courage of conviction. Now, these I am taking up again to indicate their meaning, their purpose, and in this case it is to discharge one's duty unmindful of any extraneous consideration. Self-confidence denotes conviction that the opinion rendered is fair, frank, and objective. When a person who's a military lawyer has this conclusion in his heart that what he has said is fair, frank, and objective, then he would carry the desired degree of self-confidence, and he would then be able to express his opinion. High integrity is needed because the subject matter of advice is national defense and security, and these there is a sort of you would have heard that there is no prize for the runner-up in war. So therefore the stakes are very high, and accordingly it should be matched by the unflinching integrity in the military advisor. Now, the career opportunities for the students of military law is that they can serve in the JAG department of the armed forces. All three services, Army, Navy, Air Force, have their own JAG department, and men and women both are eligible to serve there subject to the vacancies. They can practice military law in case they are not interested in service as a JAG officer. Then paramilitary forces, these include Border Security Force, Central Industrial Security Force, Indo-Tibet Border Force, Assam Rifles, the Railway Protection Force, etc. They also have their legal advisors, and their regulations are more or less on the same lines as military law provisions. Then there are central government standing councils and panel councils in various courts, primarily at the High Court and Supreme Court level, where the knowledge of military law is expected. There are slots. There have been officers who shifted to Ministry of Law and Justice. They served in Law Commission and in the Ministry of External Affairs, Legal and Treaties Division, and in the ICRC, that is the International Committee of the Red Cross. And of course, now different universities are thinking of making military law as an optional or compulsory paper, and that would require teachers who are well versed, faculty well versed in military law. There may also be a requirement of officers in the corporate sector now that the armament industry is opening up to corporate sector. So they would require JAG officers for rules, regulations, contract matters, arbitration, motor accident compensation tribunal, then cantonments and military stations, their management, because these areas have the troops and families living there, and they require military law provisions and cantonment management and military stations in years ahead would see JAG officers being employed there, and the teaching has already been covered. Now, there are other slots also. The Armed Forces Tribunal, their registry is employing JAG officers. They would be needed in the NHRC or the state human rights commissions. They may go to International Criminal Court, and apart from that, under the UN Assistant Secretary General relating to peacekeeping in the Peacekeeping Department of United Nations, also there would be need of military lawyers who are well versed in international law and IHL provisions. An entry in the JAG department, a word about it I would cover. Firstly, it is important to remember that the JAG department is the smallest cadre of the regular army. It is quite small. There are no other ranks. It is only officer cadre, and the strength now, overall strength may be just about 400. Though this figure has risen substantially in last 2 decades. Earlier it used to be just about 100 officers, and because of the small size, annual induction, which is based on the wastage rate, is quite small. It is not fixed, and in any case the ratio between men and women is not fixed. There are two modes of entry: direct commission of law graduates who go to Officers Training Academy at St. Thomas Mount in Chennai, and they undergo pre-commission training, and then they are posted to the JAG department as officers. Now that is one which is called direct commission, and also there is an inter-arm transfer. This means that the officers who may otherwise be already serving in whether infantry, armored corps, artillery, or various service or arms, if they have a law degree, then they may apply for lateral transfer, also called inter-arm transfer, and they are considered kept in probation, and if found fit, they are permanently seconded to the Judge Advocate General's Department. So in short, there are these two modes of entry: direct commission and inter-arm transfer. Law graduates, as was just explained, they are screened at the Services Selection Board, medically fit. If they meet the physical parameters, merit list is drawn depending upon comparative merit, and those who are there in the merit list, they may be called upon to report to OTA Chennai, Officers Training Academy Chennai, and after completion of the pre-commission training, they step into the JAG department after carrying out initial infantry attachment that may be for 2 years or as laid down. Inter-arm transfer, I've already explained. These are the officers who are laterally transferred. They have a law degree and they are on the rolls of various arms and services. Now, in the end, I would like to conclude by saying that military law offers a scope for stimulating and rewarding career, and in India, we look forward to further considerable expansion of the department and need for law graduates who are well versed in military law. Thank you.